How we doing, people? Right, so this one is quite an interesting topic, actually. So I'm going to do a VR to Geordie Slasher Gaming, and he put out a community question: what is a horror game? So I'm not an expert on this by any means. Don't get me wrong. I love me horror movies. Don't play so many horror games, and that's mainly because, if I'm honest, I don't have a lot of patience with them. A lot of horror games are not just running around aimlessly killing things. If they were, then they'd be a slasher game, which of course is a different genre. For example, I'm a big fan of Devil May Cry, and it's because it's fast paced, it's a slasher game. Obviously, most horror games aren't. They're your Resident Evils and so on and so forth. Obviously, like I've said before in a short I did on here, which got a lot of attention, I'm not a Resident Evil fan. And that's the main reason I'm not a fan, because, like I say, I haven't got the patience. Not to say I haven't played them, just didn't enjoy them. So, this is the thing for me. I prefer my high-paced games. I like House of the Dead because you're going through and you're just shooting zombies, which is what I really want to be doing, just killing them. I don't want to do all the puzzles and the running around stuff. But like I say, that's not to say that I don't play them or haven't played them. So, right, I'm going to attempt to answer this question in the way I see it. So, I don't suppose there's really a right or a wrong answer to it, but I'll just give you my input on it. So, one of the things that I realised, especially playing Resident Evil, for example, one of the things I realised that's important for a horror game is for you to feel the tension. The feeling that something can happen at any time, which of course is how you feel when you watch a horror movie. And remember that, because I think that's an important part to remember there. So a good example of something that's very simple but should be in horror games are jump scares. And let's be honest, no game did it better than Resident Evil. And the one I'm talking about in particular, and this would have made everybody jump when they first played it, was the part when you're running down the hallway and the dogs come bursting through the windows. Classic example there of a horror game. There isn't a single person that played that game that didn't jump. And if you said you didn't, you're a liar. So, because I know I did. I jumped out of my skin when I played that game. Because you just don't see it coming. They just come bursting through the windows. And of course, the way they've done it was in a way that is fairly quiet. And the music doesn't give you any reason to feel any tension at that point. Because that's another thing that's very important. And we'll get to that in a sec. But you don't feel like danger's going to happen. So, of course, when the dogs come bursting through the windows, it does make you jump. And then, of course, the music changes. So this leads me into my next part. Another important part about horror games is the music. Exactly the same as the movies. You can tell when things are going to take a turn for the worst when the music starts getting eerier. And that's a very important part as well. I think if a game doesn't have the right type of music, it doesn't feel like a horror. So anyway, we've spoke mainly about Resident Evil so far. And like I say, I'm not a massive fan, so by no means am I an expert on it. But there is a game that I have played quite a bit, and I do have some input on that one. And that game would be Alien Isolation. Now, for me, this is a good example of a horror game. I mean, you could say sci-fi horror, but for me, it's still horror. The reason I say this is a good example of a horror game is because they get everything right. The music's right. There's jump scares. You've got that constant threat that something could happen at any point. And then you've also got the fact that you feel like you're in the movie. And I think that's important, especially if you're doing a movie franchise. You should feel like you are a part of it. You should feel like you are in a horror movie. So, Alien Isolation is a classic example of that. And the thing with that game is that every time you play it, you never quite know where this thing's coming from, which adds another layer of tension because it changes every time you play. And then there's, of course, there's the fact that you have to hide from it and make sure it doesn't hear you, otherwise it finds you. And and you've got to go around and do all these little things covertly. You know, all things that work very well, because of course we know this happened in the very first Alien movie. You know, the things that they tried to do and they didn't know where it was, and it jumped out and killed people, which of course is another thing you see in that game. Plenty of people getting picked off. So for me, I think that's my best example I could use. It's the one I've played more of and actually enjoyed as well. For a horror game, I did enjoy that. So yeah, I think that would be my best example, because it's so well done, isn't it? And there's a reason why it's a very beloved game, because it is a good game. They got everything right with it. It was done really well, and that's the thing with that game. It's not just the playing that's the important part; it's how you feel when you're playing it. And I've spoke to plenty of people that have also and said that when they were playing that game, they were absolutely crapping their pants. And I can see why, because you're sitting on the edge of your seat. And in some ways, you know, if you watch the Alien movie, sometimes you might be able to predict what's going to happen. If you've watched it before, then you definitely know. But with this game, you never know, because it changes each time. You know, one time he might come out through an air vent, another time he might come running down the corridor. It changes every time. So there's an element of surprise, and I think that's also another important thing with horror games. So, like I say, by no means am I an expert. I don't play enough horror games to be an expert. But for me, this is the way I come at it. I think, from my own personal experience, that these are the traits that make a game a horror game. So I hope that answered that, Geordie Slasher Gaming. If none of you guys have seen his original community challenge, I will link it below. It'll be in the description below. So just have a look in the description, give it a click, give it a watch, because it's a very good video. Mark definitely knows his stuff when it comes to horror. He's a big fan of horror movies as well. He definitely knows his stuff. He's a hell of a lot more qualified than I am. So it's a very good, well put together video. So go and check it out. I definitely recommend you do that. And just a few things to say before I wrap up the video. Before I go to my usuals, I just want to say thank you to Pedro, VHS Bootleggers, for having me on the stream the other night, the Bruce Lee stream. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a good night, good conversation, and I was really happy to be a part of that, so thanks, mate. And if you haven't checked that out, go over to VHS Bootleggers and check it out. It's on there at the moment, so very good night that was. And I'm just going to do my usuals now. So if you have enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe. And also hit that notification bell and click all, so that you're made aware of all our future videos. And also, while I'm on here, I'll just want to mention about the Anbernic Facebook group. Like I've said before, it's now been changed. It's part of emulation in general, which of course is everywhere. It's not just handheld anymore. It is emulation in general. So if that's something that interests you, go over and check it out. A link to that Facebook page is in the description below. And all there is left to say really is take care, stay safe, Nerdy Geezer out.